All right, we have the green light. Hi guys, my name's Philip Nelson. I'm with NewTek, and I'll be your moderator today for the Best Practices for Webcasting Sports panel. We have a great panel of guests here today, and one of the things I'd like to do is I'd like this to be more of an interactive panel. So if you have questions, I feel like don't wait till the end. Raise your hand. If we're talking about something and you want us to elaborate on it a little more, just let us know. And before we get started, I'd like to get an idea of who's in the crowd. How many of you guys do sports production now, or in like a league level? Any league level people here? League. All right, we have a league. How many people are in television? Anybody in TV? How many people are just curious? Let's see. What other category are we looking for? Journalism. Press. Any press? We have press. Corporate video. All right, we have some. Okay, cool. So. I'm going to go ahead and let each person introduce themselves. We'll start off with Mike McLeod with PGA Tour Digital. He's the Senior Manager of Advertising and Products. Mike, if you want to tell us a little bit about what you do at the PGA Tour.
So the PGA Tour, we broadcast 42 golf tournaments every year, and my current assignment is to help PGA Tour Digital vet its advertising technological solutions. It's sort of a new role for me for the last year and a half that the PGA Tour has been separate, that they have published in-house without the aid of a broadcast partner. I was involved in video systems, live video and video on demand. So sort of a technical product manager is the role that I've usually played.
Cool, thank you. Our next panelist is Alan Dela Cruz with Major League Gaming, and you are the SVP of Engineering, correct?
Yep.
All right, so what does that mean?
Sure. So I run the engineering team at Major League Gaming.
Wow,
so anyone
awesome.
not familiar with Major League Gaming, we're kind of the most recognized brand in esports and one of the fastest growing digital networks worldwide. We run the premier global gaming competitions and broadcast them along with other esports content on our streaming platform, MLG TV.
So how many people are familiar with e-gaming? Anyone? So basically video games, right?
Competitive video game.
Hardcore but competitive video games.
Yep.
Yes. All right.
So if I'm an amateur, I stream to Twitch, and if it's a real tournament, I'm streaming through Major League Gaming. Is that sort of?
I like that you said that.
He's your new marketing agent. And our third panelist is Shannon Rutherford with NFL Now, and he's the manager of video systems and engineering. So tell us a little bit about what you do at NFL Now.
Sure. I managed all the back-end streaming infrastructure from working with providers to acquire the footage, whether it's from the stadium, whether it's from a studio, and then all of the sort of A to Z to getting it all the way to the CDN delivery to the consumer. So for those of you who saw the keynote speech from Corey Mummery, I worked very closely with him on NFL Now, as well as some other NFL products.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's just jump right in, and I'm not going to do a panel where we just go down the line and answer. Just if you have something to say, feel free to say it. If you don't want to talk about a topic, just say no thanks. The first thing is, why is digital important to the strategy for your league, your team? Y'all are all leagues, I guess. So even golf is a league, right? Kind of.
It is.
So why is digital important to you guys?
I mean, it's where everyone is consuming the content, right? Broadcast is still very heavily dominated in terms of appointment TV when it comes to live sports, but not everyone can be at their TV at a certain time of that appointment, so they'll either watch it on their phone, their tablet, or they'll catch the sort of debrief highlights from their phone, as well as all the interactivity with second screen experiences. I think that's why digital is important.
I mean, the way that we think of it at the PGA Tour, we've gone through some persona studies, and so there is absolutely, you played around a golf at a golf club and you're watching the tournament on the TV, but you may also have a high schooler or a college person who is in a dorm room without a cable subscription, who's going to be looking on a tablet, on a desktop, or on their device. And so we're just basically following where the people's consumption habits are. And then there are people that are displaced. You're shopping or you're at church and you can't be near a TV, and so how are you going to check in there?
Yeah, I think our situation is a little different from traditional sports in that we actually started in the digital space, right? Our video has always been broadcast on the internet. We've been doing it for over a decade now, broadcasting our competitions. And we've been on TV. We've been on traditional broadcast media, but our focus has always been on digital.
So that kind of leads me. I'd like to get some comments on your workflow. And who's either any of the three of you can jump in first. But as far as your digital content that you're distributing, I mean, what is your setup? What is your workflow? You can give us as much or as little as you feel like. Let's start with e-gaming.
Sure.
So you do an event, a huge tournament. I mean, what is the setup you guys use there?
From a technical?
Yeah, or sure. Technical as you want to get.
Sure. So we have a streaming platform that supports both, live events and our affiliate events that run. They just need an encoder there. We give them an ingest and give them suggested encoding profiles and a bunch of tools for, interacting with their live stream as they stream it. That'll include, monetization tools for ad injection, tracking viewership. There'll also be the tools for seeing how the stream is doing globally, so they can tailor their content on the fly. And I think, in terms of, from what a partner sees, that's about it. They get a dashboard, they get monetization tools, they have ad injection tools where they can specify on the fly, I need to inject an ad of, a minute and a half right now. So the broadcaster can go do their makeup.
But from a perspective telling the story of e-gaming, on the production end, what is how many cameras, what does it take to cover a gaming event?
It matters event to event. So when we do one of our major pro circuits, and I don't actually run the productions, I run the tech there mostly. But,
okay.
I don't know how familiar you guys are with our pro circuit events, but usually, we'll rent out a very large venue, and over the course of a weekend, 20,000 to 30,000 people will come in and witness it. We'll have the gigantic, movie theater screens and all the different player perspectives, which I think is also unique for esports going. And then we'll have all the production tools necessary to switch that onto the live stream. So the broadcasting, the people running the broadcast can produce the live stream.
Okay, cool. Anyone else? Workflow discussion?
Well, I think there's a lot of different workflows. It depends on what the product is. Some workflows are complicated in the sense that we have a stadium, and there's a lot of cameras, and there's a lot of acquisition happening from trucks. So we get backhaul from those trucks, both over fiber and satellite. We have a lot of ways to then route those feeds to many of our different facilities across America, New York, New Jersey, Los Angeles. So that's one sort of use case, and then we have centralized areas where we can ingest those feeds into encoders, send those encoded feeds up to a CDN. Other use cases would be where we have a studio and it's a little bit shorter of a daisy chain. So we have a green screen room, we have talent, they're doing analysis. We're literally taking the output of the production, like the TriCaster that we use, route that mixed program down baseband video into an encoder, and then it goes out to the CDN.
Cool.
And so I'm going to ignore for a minute sort of the simulcast aspect of us pushing out live what you see on CBS or NBC.
Aliens have landed.
Exactly. And so we do have alternate live programming, which is where if you're at the golf tournament, we'll broadcast one hole, or we will follow a group of golfers around. And at that point, what we do is we have some voiceover talent that are either at the studio back in St. Augustine, Florida, or that are at the event. And we have our own sort of, in one of the mobile trucks, there'll be their own sort of productions area. And the feed will be coming in primarily from fixed cameras in the case of sitting on one hole, or in over-the-shoulder cameras with a point-to-point RF person following around the group. One of the main things we're interested in is driving down the cost of both the statutory cameras and the over-the-shoulder cameras, is to use a smaller, easier rigs and less human labor if we can, sort of in the long term. But we bring that back into a control room, and then we may do graphics on the feed The voiceover talent will obviously voice over the action that's happening, and we encode that and send it out.
Cool.
We also have too, I think one thing that's interesting is we're looking at doing more sort of unique added value sort of products in terms of different camera angles or certain events where, say for the media day on Super Bowl, having every single podium have a camera on it. So if you want to just go check in with, you know, either Peyton Manning or one of the other Broncos, you can just click on that guy and you can actually just watch. So I think every sort of event will have its own sort of use case in terms of how do I want to capture this, what would the consumer want to watch, and then we kind of just reverse engineer from what would a consumer want to engage with.
That's cool. So this isn't a question we discussed before, but I'd like to kind of talk about the importance of shoulder programming around the event versus the actual event. I mean, how much effort and emphasis is put on bringing a unique second screen experience or third screen or fourth screen or whatever you want to call it this week compared to just broadcasting a sporting event?
I think there's a lot of value. I mean, everyone can watch a broadcast event if they're near a television or even sometimes with an MVPD type product like DirecTV or your cable provider on an iPad. So I think more and more you're going to see more unique sort of exclusive content, whether it be like a fan pass type thing where you say, hey, sign up and we're going to give you exclusive video to, you know, your favorite players and we're going to follow them around at whatever event. I think NFL Now is doing a lot of that. We're trying to produce exclusive content that literally is being produced just for digital. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, single cam in a lot of ways, but it's content that's being done just for that second screen experience.
Cool. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would say how important is it? The answer is we don't know, but one of our highest priorities is to experiment with different types of programming. You know, I love golf, but there can be times when people are walking down the fairway. It can be a slow-moving sport. I know with the NFL you might have timeouts. There certainly is some space to do some creative programming or to offer multiple camera angles and to, you know, keep the viewer engaged and involved.
Yeah, we did a couple of years. We had a Marvin Solomon, who's a big CBS broadcaster. We had him go to the sideline, and we had him exclusively. So we would do these pops or these hits with him, and we'd have these quizzes. So we would say, like, what's the percentage chance that the Jets are going to fumble? You know, and everyone would sort of weigh in, and then you have a sort of toll, and then we would cut to Marvin on the sideline, and he would give a 30-second, 60-second pop of, you know, breaking down that play or breaking down that interception and what happened. A little bit.
So were fans online voting, or was it people? I mean, how are you getting those
It's on an
votes?
iPad. It's on an
Okay.
iPad or on an iPhone. So you launch this experience, and then you can interact, and you can play quizzes, and you can talk to other people in the app as well. And then we'll do hits with this broadcast sideline reporter who was exclusively just doing those hits for this product.
So that kind of leads me into another question on this does integrating the fan in that way enhance, you know, the stickiness of that fan? I mean, if they feel like they're influencing, are you seeing that really making a difference in how long they stay on your
Absolutely.
channel?
I mean, they can ask him a question. So he'll actually respond to one of the tweets. He'll say, at handle XYZ says, hey, Marvin, what do you think about blah, blah, blah? And he'll say, this is what I think about it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think interactivity is really the key where live streaming is going. You know, for example, you know, we've seen the difference when, you know, we've just integrated a more real-time chat to the live streamers, and literally the streamers are interacting directly with their audience, and engagement metrics are very telling on that.
So your on-camera talent is interacting with the chat room?
On-camera talent, whether it be, you know, one of our streaming partners at their encoder, or whether it be in the studio, people running our shows from the studio are also there talking on the live stream. or at one of our pro circuit events. We also have people there, either social or to represent us on the live stream and to be talking to the interacting with the fans.
Cool.
Yeah. And I can tell you from the PGA Tour's perspective is there was a period of time, I would say 3 or 4 years ago, when there was an awful lot in the live at and follow group, where there was a lot of host and sort of fan interaction. And then for whatever reason, the last 3 years, that really hasn't been an emphasis. And I can tell you that this year, it absolutely is.
Cool.
Is, offering trivia quizzes or having some fan Twitter interaction to bring them in. So does it deliver longer durations? Stay tuned. This time next year, I can tell you how it performed.
Cool. So when you guys started developing your projects, what were some surprises that you discovered that may be beneficial to the people here in the audience? Is there anything that was like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that in advance? And you can pass that wisdom along to the people sitting in this room. Anything? I mean, if you don't have anything or don't want to admit it, I understand.
I think using that same example of doing live interactive TV on a digital platform when it's sort of in and out, it was tough because there's a latency with HLS streaming. And so when you do the hit live at the stadium and then when you actually push it to the app are two different timelines. So you're in a control room and you're saying, okay, go live, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. You do the hit, you do a wipe, it looks really nice. But then when you actually want to push that to the app, you want to push it, so you want to actually overlay it on the app. You need to do it so that when you actually hit that sort of that send request to the app, that when it pops up that video player, it's not garbage before the wipe.
Oh, yeah.
That it actually gets pushed right when the wipe starts. Otherwise, you push it and it's either you sit and you see a slate for 10 seconds, or you push it and then the viewer gets the hit 10 seconds into the hit.
Oh, wow.
That was one thing that we came across for that use case that was very interesting. That after doing that, I looked back and said, there's got to be a better way of doing these types of hits. So,
have you found that way? Are you...
Well, we kind of stopped doing that product, so we never actually, we just timed it right. We actually figured out how to time it just exactly right. Stopwatches, we had a second screen experience there with the feed up so the director could actually look at it and
cool.
Knew exactly when to go. So we kind of just got the timing down.
That's cool.
But it still isn't ideal. There's better ways to do it, which I'm sure we just haven't had much of an incentive because there hasn't been more of that demand.
Right. Cool. Anything? Anybody else want to add anything to surprises?
Yeah, we had similar problems with the hand wave time from when the live broadcast is and when it actually gets broadcast out to the devices. And we've been working on a few solutions to both mitigate that and come up with better solutions for actual exact cue pointing for when we wanted to do these interactive things. So yeah, it's been a challenge, I think.
Cool.
We had a similar solution, fine-tuning it, but for us, we provide for example, ad injection tools to the live streaming partners. So we had to come up with a solution that satisfied both, whether they be device integrations on a console like an Xbox, or what would that HLS stream on an iOS device, and that ended up being pretty interesting.
And I would say two things. One, in-stream live ad insertion, particularly on iOS and Android, is hard. We've had many instances where we've had to pull down feeds, or we've had to go partially through a tournament without the mid-roll ad insertion working. And from a product development standpoint, it is easy to develop a live streaming product thinking perhaps only of smartphone or only of over-the-top or only the desktop. We've had to have a sort of a matrix thinking approach where we always have to run the idea through the matrix and say, okay, whole pickles with shot trails, great idea, fabulous. It's not going to work on smartphone. It is going to work on desktop. And so sort of from a product management approach is to make sure that you're thinking through each of the delivery platforms.
Interesting.
Yeah, I second the mid-roll ad replacement. I think it should be a lot easier than it actually is.
I mean,
Everyone tells you how easy it is, and then you actually go and do it, and you realize there's a lot of pain points. So.
Interesting. All right, so let's talk. We've kind of already touched on this a little bit, but let's talk about integrating social into streaming. I mean, we talk about how important the second screen is, or the the alternate devices and shoulder programming. But how do you integrate social into your broadcasts or your websites, or what is the integration that you guys are currently using? Whether it's sharing content or receiving content, like you were talking about with the voting even,
I mean, social is a huge part of the NFL's MO. I mean, I think mobile, social are huge. And we do a lot. We have a lot of social coordinators. We have a whole social team. We cut clips and send them directly to Twitter exclusively. There's a lot of course, we have an NFL network, so people can engage with the analysts on the NFL network through Twitter. I think there's just a lot of ways that we use social. You can share videos on Facebook, on Twitter. There's ways to say, hey, check this out, share.
Are you seeing, like when on that Twitter project, are you seeing a considerable amount of traffic coming back through those Twitter shares of those clips?
Seeing a lot of traffic, like a huge amount. We have inline video, which is a big help. Some people, when they share videos to Twitter, it actually pops the video out of Twitter, which then makes it hard to go back. But we have inline video, so that way when you can actually hit the video, you're actually watching the video inline on Twitter, and then you can just keep scrolling down. You don't have to come back. That just increases the engagement.
Is that inline video, is that something that is NFL has access to, or is that something anyone can do if they set it up correctly?
Anyone can do it. They have to just set it up correctly.
Just don't do a link. You upload the video to Twitter.
Yeah, there's specific requirements Twitter has with HTML5, secure video, have to have a specific player. So it's just...
If you do it right, it's going to be inline and nice.
They will approve it, yeah.
And so with that inline video, the engagement is higher because they don't leave the Twitter experience.
It's part of their, I think it's called Twitter Amplify.
Okay.
So just to deep dive into that just a little bit, if you use an OVP, you can publish your online video player into the Twitter stream. You also can use the Twitter content management system to publish, or you also can publish a VMAP, an XML payload, into the Twitter stream. So there's kind of the Twitter Amplify platform is evolving, but there are 3 different ways you can go about it. And it can be somewhat challenging to set up. All of your assets have to be secure, have to be HTTPS. You have to sort of go through a certification validation project. But once you have it up and running, it can be pretty powerful to put your inline highlights or your inline content in the Twitter stream.
So it's worth the effort.
Yeah,
I think so.
Absolutely.
Right, when you think of, and again, we're sort of maybe getting into more video on demand than live streaming, but it's kind of hard to separate the two.
Yeah.
Because you want people to experience the stream and then relive to a certain degree what they just saw.
Well, something's viral, everyone wants to see that viral whatever. If it's e-gaming, you want to see that viral like touchdown or whatever it is, or that boxing hit or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, I guess our core audience, 16 to 30-year-olds, the social strategy is absolutely critical. And we found that we've had to integrate features directly into our platform to support this. All of our broadcasters and us ourselves and our Twitter handle, we all interact with our audience mainly through Twitter and through social. So an example of this is we when a stream goes live, we've automated that our streaming partners, their Twitter handles will automatically tweet out and link back to the video, and it'll be embedded in line and all this integration. That end-to-end integration we've incorporated into the system just because of how important it was, how much traffic we saw driving, et cetera.
So, when we talk about social, I've heard Twitter mentioned by all 3 of you. What about other social platforms like Facebook or Google Plus or even Instagram? I mean, is that a big part of what, talk about the alternate social sites besides Twitter. Is Twitter really the only one that matters from a broadcast and driving traffic to your webcast
I mean, our
perspective?
audience, like, because of how open Twitter is, like if you have, take one of our streamers, Nate Shot, he was just featured in the New York Times, right? He has, N million number of Twitter followers. That's how he's interacting with his audience on Twitter. He's not Facebook friends with them. And they're not following him on Google+, but all of them follow him on Twitter. So when he tweets out saying, hey, I'm live on MLG, I'm competing in this tournament right now where my team's practicing, come check it out, they'll come and they'll all get that. The entire audience will get that. YouTube, I guess, is also social in that way.
Right.
And it's the same sort of fact. The fact that it's open and everyone can subscribe to these esports athletes and these personalities.
It depends on what problem you're trying to solve. Each platform, Instagram, Pinterest even, Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus have their own unique characteristics. And if you're trying to drive live video and it needs to be real time, that's where Twitter works to deliver that. If you're trying to ask questions or trying to engage your fans and you have a topic that can be discussed over a period of days, we found for whatever reason, Google Plus really, that audience really engages with us.
So it's real sticky on Google Plus, and they like to have in-depth discussions, and Twitter is bite-sized pieces that can be consumed and moved on from.
Right, so it's just sort of thinking through, taking, sending something Instagram and saying, look at this great shot, here's an Instagram photo of it, or here's a short video of it, how much is that going to drive traffic back? You sort of have to play with it and figure out which platform is good for what for you.
Crazy question. I'm just going to ask it for fun. Has anybody found a real use for Snapchat?
Professionally, no.
Okay. It's funny. I was at a panel for college sports, and they were talking about how everybody should be looking at Snapchat to share those little videos. And I'm like, from our perspective at New Tech, I just haven't been able to wrap my head around a real value of that. But it's like, I'm just wondering if somebody's going to figure it out. Or is there a reason to even figure it out? We have derailed completely here when we start talking Snapchat.
I don't think why would you want to have your video only watched one time?
Well, so what they were saying is there's these types of videos you can do on Snapchat where you can say it's available for a week. Or you just set a kill point for it. And that's what they were doing. It's like, so it was like college sports information directors doing something with a player, and they're like showing highlights or something, and they're uploading it to Snapchat. I just didn't know if anybody had figured that out. We can move on from that one. I don't want to derail completely. Now that we're kind of on this social discussion, where is your audience coming from? There's a couple ways you can answer that question, like what devices are they watching on, but also how are you getting your viewers to come to whatever device?
I'll go. So for devices, it's actually interesting with us, and I think it's by virtue of our audience, I think is a little tech savvy and ahead of the curve. But we're seeing almost 50% of our viewership now on devices, which I think is not the same across other
50% is on devices, like mobile devices, or is that considered Xbox?
Yeah, mobile devices, consoles, devices. We're having 50% viewership now, this was not the case a year ago or 2 years ago. It was closer to 20%, 30%. So, and then in terms of driving that traffic is the integrations with these devices. Notifications on your phone when. We have a subscription model where people can be notified when they're following the streams they're following go live. And when that person does go live, they'll get a notification on their mobile device, and we're seeing that's driving a lot of traffic. Things like that. We have direct integrations with YouTube where if a YouTuber is live streaming and someone is watching one of their VOD, one of their videos on YouTube, they'll get a little pop-up notification that says, so-and-so is live on MLG TV now.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So just to call that out, that's like a specific use case for Major League Gaming, and that's there's no silver bullet. As you look at the platforms and you see how it integrates with what you were doing. So it may be different with say corporate broadcasting versus league broadcasting versus news broadcasting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think he nailed it. I mean, we don't have to work we have a built-in audience in some respects. We have ads we run. It's a little bit different model than.
So
Yeah, I don't know
NFL
if the
broadcast, they're saying watch NFL now?
Yeah.
Or so is it live on the air, or is it is it on the streams of the games, or I mean,
We do a big commercial campaign during all the live games, so that helps drive traffic. We always see a spike in consumption every time we run an ad.
so ads do work.
Ads do work. It's a very traditional model. It's been around for a long time.
It's time tested.
A spike in online consumption when you run a broadcast ad?
So just to talk about consumption, the PGA Tour is appointment viewing, and we are finding that we're about 30% mobile as far as our streams, which surprises us a little bit because the website in general, across all content types, is closer to 50-50. So we're actually surprised that our mobile live streams are only 30% at this point. And we believe that part of that has to do with folks are in the office in the U.S. on Thursday and Friday. And so if they want to look at the scores, they'll pick up their phone and look at the scores. But if they do want to check in on the live broadcast, they're opting for the better screen they have available, and that would be the desktop. Having said that, we are absolutely expecting 2 years from now, that'll be 50 or above.
Yeah, I mean,
You've got to prepare for mobile.
We've seen, I think, consistently 200% year-over-year growth.
Yeah.
Wow.
Of mobile.
And so the challenge, I think, is we've talked about the problem with mid-roll insertion on mobile. So that has to get better. And when we talk about social interaction, and we also talk about statistical overlays and providing context, how do you accomplish that in the iOS environment or the Android environment? So those are the next sort of 2 years challenges as the consumption moves more toward mobile. Are those platforms going to get more mature? Are we sort of going to move from Flash to an HTML5 broadcast that is as rich and as compelling as doing something on desktop?
So before we go any further, does anyone in the audience have any questions or anything they'd like us to elaborate on a little bit? Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
I know that all three of you probably have diverse demographics in the NFL kind of covering both your team, but I'm assuming you're skewing older and you're skewing younger.
Absolutely.
So I was going to ask what you guys were seeing in, you're saying 30% mobile. What's the breakdown in tablets versus mobile phones? And then I've got some other questions, but I'll ask those later.
So I would need to look up the exact statistics, and I have some here. But I would say surprisingly, and I think this was echoed in the NFL Now presentation, is that if someone is in their living room and they have a choice between looking at, say, an iPad for an alternate stream or a phone, we're finding that the mobile phone, the smartphone, is getting the majority of that usage. Directionally, it probably breaks down to less than 10 is tablet and 20% is smartphones. We're actually surprised that when it comes to, I said best available screen, is that if I have the two devices, I'm finding more people choosing the phone rather than the tablet, and I don't quite know why that is.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know the exact breakdown from for us between the phones and tablets. I think it weighs heavily on phones, though. I think that's partially, though, there's just so many more phones out there than people on tablets. But it's probably something similar, to more than 2/3.
I'm surprised at the tablet duration. I mean, when I sort of just logically think through it, I would think, just to throw some generic numbers out there, if desktop is 10 units and smartphone is 2 units, sort of stream consumption, if they are compatible in that way, I would expect tablet to be more than phone, but it actually ends up being closer to the 2 rather than, say, 4 or 5, if that makes sense. If desktop consumption is 5 times in average stream duration than smartphone, I'm finding tablet is as low in duration or similar to smartphone.
Cool. We had another question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, most sporting events are multi-cam operations, so I'm curious in a couple different areas how you guys are dealing with resources, hardware, and workflows. In particular, it seems like the viewer experience is demanding more and more in the way of isolated cameras. So getting, say, 5 or 6 or 8 cameras back from a location into a stream, presents a lot of challenges in terms of the number of decoders that you need, whether you multiplex it or not, how you split the signals, what kind of bandwidth you have available on site. And then there are other things in the operational side too, like any cameraman doing a sporting event, generally when the director puts him online and he gets a tally light, he knows he's on. If he's isolated to a web stream, he doesn't know he's on, and it means that he can't drop the camera, he can't refocus. It really changes a lot of the things that happen in the way of workflow. Have you guys dealt with this, and have you addressed it?
Well, I'll take that one. We right now don't offer a lot of just single camera follow a guy around. I think we call them, there's a term for them, I think they call them gophers, or some sort of just kind of guy just kind of goes around and just shoots.
Yeah.
But we certainly are looking at doing more of that, and we have, for instance, instant replay, which has to collect all the angles of all the cameras. It's become very critical for real-time decision-making, both on the field and back in New York at the headquarters. And so the way in which those feeds are acquired and distributed does require a lot of architecture and bandwidth. So we work with partners to ensure we have the bandwidth. We have, at every stadium, we have a cabinet that is its own HVAC cooling, that has dual network routers, and all those cameras are being fed back into that cabinet. That cabinet is then now part of our internal NFL backbone. That then gets fed over IP back to Central Command, so we can see at New York exactly what the guy in the field is seeing. And we can actually control what he's seeing by selecting the angles and so forth. So the technology is already there in terms of tapping into different camera angles. I think for us, the challenge becomes how do we, quote unquote, productize it? Because, yeah, we can put it out there, but will people care?
That leads me to a follow-up is, do fans really care about ISO cams anymore? I know that when, some certain sports leagues were getting into digital, it was like, it would seem like an industry buzz. It's like, you can pick your own camera, but is it worth the, if you have 4 cameras, now you're multiplying your bandwidth needs, and do the fans really care that much to get those isolated cameras? Now, it's different if it's like following a hole. If I just want to watch one hole and watch a show from one hole, that's a webcast from one hole, but do people want to pick their own cameras in a sporting event?
I think you're going to hemorrhage money, but you do it because you want to offer that product. You're certainly not going to have a cost-benefit analysis that makes a lot of sense in terms of the engagement. But then, with that said, there is a certain value you get from having a brand and having products that people might want to use. I think for everything it's different, right? So I'm a tennis fan, and if I'm watching the US Open, I like to be able to pick the game that I want to watch, which is a little bit different, I suppose, or like having a different angle of, I want to see the point of view of Rafael Nadal. Like, I want to see his point of view
right
when the ball's coming. Like, that's a little bit more interesting, I think. So maybe if we started putting helmet cams on all the players, I don't know. I mean, it just depends on what the product is.
So what I can tell you is at the PGA Tour, we've run a number of tests with robotic cameras, with cameras that are lower in expense, and also working with mesh networks, with mesh RF networks, so that we don't have to have an over-the-shoulder person following a group and have somebody with a radio transmitting back point to point, is working to have a mesh so that it's just two people, sound and camera, versus sound, camera, and transmitter guy. And so I don't think those have reached full fruition yet. I think we're a good number of years out of having the price drop and having the stadiums wired with alternate cameras, or golf courses wired to do that. And yeah, the main question is, what is the value of it? An alternate camera of at the Players Championship on hole 17, of seeing the ball flight and seeing the player's reaction. I mean, I think we would feel that that's of value, and we would go to the expense to do that. And so how could we make one of those cameras more remote operated perhaps than human operated, or how can we make it mobile so it's not fixed? I think if you really think through it and you do some experiments, you can find the multiple angles that are gonna be compelling, as opposed to just wiring up everything and spending a lot of money and then having nobody, presenting 6 views and having nobody click on 4 of them.
You mind if I follow that up?
Yeah, sure.
That brings up an interesting point. Do you find that the broadcast cameras are of a certain value for isolated views like that? Or are you finding that you want to actually install a separate chain of hardware just for those isolated live streams, so that you can get the kind of content that you want without disturbing or having to pull from the broadcast camera?
That's the direction that the experiments have gone in, is that CBS and NBC have a certain amount of spread, and there has been some investment in hub hardware, so that instead of being able to simultaneously support 3 streams at any one given time, they can take in the control room 12 streams, and so they can have alternate streams coming in. But when we think of online only, it is a different audience that is in a different mind state, and they're looking at a different screen and a different point of view. So I think the commandment is that this is a different broadcast medium, and we want you guys to experiment separate than the traditional TV broadcast, and figure out what works. Sometimes pairing the two, isn't the right way to go.
It still feels like it's in the experimental stage.
I also think that it's a
absolutely
challenge too, along those lines. It's a challenge because the broadcasters spend a lot of money for the rights to broadcast. So they have a lot of talent and a lot of infrastructure at the event. So taking any sport, I'll say football, they have really cool camera, that spider camera that kind of flies around. We have this thing called Next Gen Stats. It's very interesting, that basically has chips in all of the football players' gear, and those chips basically measure speed, velocity, acceleration. And so that all then ties back into overlay graphics now that they can actually do. That adds value to the broadcast. All those things add value, all those cool angles, being able to do a 360 virtual reality of the field mid-play, and and just kind of, that all adds broadcast from a viewership point of view. To try and find something that's sort of outside of that ecosystem, that's just a slice of digital only, that's going to be its own stack, it doesn't make a lot of sense unless you have a really brilliant idea, and then we should talk. Because there is so much value that's already being done in terms of the broadcast. So it's hard to say, well, what can we do that's not already being done?
So we have about 3 minutes left. So we're going to ask one more question, and feel free to answer this in any way you want. What is next in sports production and broadcasting, or broadcasting? Where will we be in 5 years? Or you could say, where will we be in 2 years? I don't care.
I'll start. For us, and this has been our major initiative, is just anytime, anywhere, make the stream available to people. So the devices, smart televisions, mobile. So just us being able to get on those devices, but also monetize on them because we have an ad-supported model. And with as they'd mentioned, the issues with precise ad timing or mid-roll injection on HLS streams on those devices, being able to satisfy that and monetize. And then also, I think just the evolution of interactivity. We've seen so much, like I said, the engagement metrics speak for themselves on, adding chat, adding features. We have interactive polls that the streamers can do. We have these tools for them to interact with their audience in real time. And I think just the evolution of that, like what's next? How do we have that same experience across different devices?
That's exactly it. If 5 years from now, if you tune in to Live at 17 on your smartphone, I would like a way or I expect that the ecosystem will figure out a way to, you say, okay, what am I looking at? Oh, here's some data. Okay, I see the whole, thank you. Okay, what is the Twitterverse saying about this shot? Okay, thank you. Is that I'm looking for more interactivity on mobile devices. I feel like we're mature and we've solved it to a large degree on desktop, and so I'm looking for those same solutions in mobile. And just a quick aside, 120 Sports is an app that I look at a lot. A lot of leagues have invested in it, and I actually happened to be looking at it this morning, and they had a live stream going. And again, this was in a tablet app. The smartphone is a different form factor. But as the live broadcast was going, they have 1, 2, 3, 4 data cards down below, sort of these little squares. And so as they go from story to story, the cards below switch, and it may be a tweet from somebody, or it may be a little factoid. But that was one example of mobile. Again, it was tablet, which you have more horsepower there, but where they were integrating the live stream with some data. And so, having that in a smartphone and having it a little more mature and complex is what I look forward to in 5 years.
Shannon, anything you'd like to finish out with? Finish strong, baby. Finish strong.
Just to add, I would say media enrichment. So metadata.
Yeah.
I think that's going to become a really big part of the next generation of digital video consumption is metadata.
For NFL, while I'm watching the play, I want to click on the play. So a guy makes a good play, I want to click on that and see how many fantasy points did he rack up for me. I mean, that's what I want.
Yeah, I think rich metadata, and having it be interactive, having it be on the screen, having it be maybe even unique to you.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so I think we're at a time. I would like to encourage you all to take those yellow cards and give us all 5s. And say this was the best panel you've ever seen in your life. They actually do listen to those, so please fill those surveys out and give us a good rating. I will shill for that. I'd like to thank our panel, Mike McLeod, Alan Dela Cruz, Shannon Rutherford, and I'd like to thank Streaming Media West for having us. So appreciate you guys.
Well, thank you guys.